In the Kursk region, the armed forces of Ukraine's aviation struck with high-precision air bombs at buildings with Russian drone operators. The video of the attack was posted on the Sunflower Telegram channel, which is affiliated with Ukrainian aviation. According to the available information, Ukrainian aviation used 4 precision-guided bombs to hit the enemy base. The munitions hit the target and destroyed a building that was being monitored by a Ukrainian reconnaissance drone. The Russian drones were stationed in the border village of Alexeyevka in the Kursk region. From this point, the Russians launched drones to attack Ukrainian territory, particularly the Sumy region. Since the beginning of the full-scale war, the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has not only maintained its combat capability, but also reached a qualitatively new level of combat operations. Every day, Ukrainian pilots demonstrate that even Soviet aircraft can effectively use modern Western bombs. As a result, the Ukrainian Armed Forces aviation is conducting targeted and severe strikes against both the occupation forces in the temporarily occupied territories and military facilities in Russia. Typical targets of Ukrainian combat aviation include command posts, ammunition depots, logistics hubs, and places where enemy infantry and equipment are concentrated. The use of high-precision AASM hammer, JDAM ER, and GBU-39 bombs allows for the destruction of the enemy in the frontline area with minimal risk to pilots. This ammunition has been successfully adapted to Soviet MiG-29 and Su-27 fighters, Su-24M frontline bombers, and Su-25 attack aircraft. Since 2025, Western F-16 fighters have been increasingly used in combat operations, further expanding the capabilities of the Ukrainian Air Force. Ukrainian fighters from the 65th Mech Brigade UAV unit pulled off a successful op behind Russian lines on Zaporizhzhia front, hitting an enemy post, then destroying a 1L-122 Garmin radar and wrecking their gear. Russian forces have intensified their attacks along the Zaporizhzhia front, launching hundreds of strikes in recent days as they probe Ukrainian defenses across multiple settlements. Artillery, drones, and missile barrages have targeted both frontline positions and rear area infrastructure, with some areas hit repeatedly in attempts to wear down resistance and disrupt logistics. Civilian areas have not been spared, as drone strikes and glide bombs damaged residential buildings and humanitarian aid warehouses, injuring several people and destroying much-needed supplies. Despite the heavy shelling, Ukrainian defenses have largely held firm. Ukrainian fighter jets, including MiG-29s, have been actively engaging Russian positions with Western-supplied guided bombs, striking ammunition depots, drone launch points, and command posts in response to the continued pressure. These counterstrikes have become a regular feature of the Zaporizhzhia front, aiming to degrade Russian capabilities and prevent further buildup near key contact zones. The situation on the ground remains largely static. Russian troops attempted limited advances near Orikhiv and Mala Tokmachka, but these efforts were repelled without significant territorial change. The European Union is planning a large-scale modernization of ports and transport infrastructure in terms of preparation for a potential war with Russia. It is an investment of up to 75 billion euros, which will be the largest such project since World War II, the Wall Street Journal reported. Although the preparations are of a defensive nature, the EU emphasizes that the project will also benefit in peacetime, as roads, railways, digital infrastructure, and communication systems will be modernized. Modernization work has already begun in the ports of Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, and Romania, and they are being adapted to quickly receive NATO troops and equipment in the event of a crisis. Currently, NATO member states are not only increasing spending on armaments, but also including funding for transportation hubs and strategic infrastructure in their military budgets. At the same time, some shipping company executives have expressed concern that the reorientation of ports to military needs could reduce their competitiveness in the civilian sector. The European Commission has proposed investing up to 75 billion euros in military mobility in the next 5-year budget. This is 10 times more than the 1.7 billion euros allocated in the current budget process until 2027. The ability to move troops and equipment quickly across Europe is critical for security, said Apostolos Tzitzikostas, European Commissioner for Transport. Security was a central topic of the recent meeting of the European Seaports Organization. We understand the need for these changes, but they should not compromise economic efficiency, said Katarzyna Gruszecka-Spichała, Vice President of Finance at the Port of Gdynia, Poland. She also noted that private investors are afraid of investing in projects that could be targeted by Russian attacks. NATO and the European Commission have already identified 500 critical infrastructure facilities in the EU that need to be modernized in the face of a possible confrontation with Russia. According to knowledgeable sources, these are roads, railways, bridges, tunnels, and ports. Everything that ensures rapid military movement. Recently, the European Commission published a new policy document, the White Paper for European Defense, which identified key security challenges facing the EU and the ways to overcome them. Estonian authorities have begun constructing the first section of the Baltic Defense Line, a fortified barrier along the border with Russia. Estonian public broadcaster ERR reported on June 19th. By autumn 2025, the country's defense forces, working with the National Center for Defense Investments, plan to build up to 28 bunkers and 10 storage facilities, as well as install up to 4 kilometers of anti-tank ditches, according to Armin Silevask, a representative of the Estonian Nuclear Energy Institute overseeing the fortification project. Currently, trenches are being dug along the border strip in line with the Defense Force's requirements. Each trench is approximately 4 meters wide and 2 meters deep. An anti-tank ditch halts the enemy and slows their movement. When they try to clear a path through the trench, they become an easy target for our weapons, said Lieutenant Colonel Einar Afanasyev, commander of the Defense Forces Division Engineering Unit. The barrier ditches are part of the broader development of the Baltic Defense Line, a project in which Estonia's Ministry of the Environment and Natural Resources is investing 4.4 million euros this year. On June 10th, the head of Germany's Federal Intelligence Service, Bruno Kahl, warned that Russia intends to test NATO's resolve by expanding its confrontation with the West beyond Ukraine. China has become the most important enabler of Russia's war machine. 19 June 2025. The drones fly thick and fast towards Kyiv these days. Almost 500 were fired in a recent Russian attack on Ukraine's capital in the early hours of June 10th. Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, fears that at current rates of production, Russia may soon be able to launch raids that involve twice the number of machines. To pick through the debris and peer inside those weapons is to come face to face with a grim reality. China is the most important, perhaps decisive, enabler of Russia's war machine. Consider the Shahed, an Iranian-designed attack drone which is now mass-produced inside Russia. The wreckage of one is pictured in Kyiv. Such drones were once stuffed with American microelectronics, smuggled in via Asia to circumvent sanctions. The newest ones, however, are filled with Chinese parts. Western officials tell The Economist that China has been providing various forms of support to Russia since 2023, including critical components of weaponry and civilian drones. Much of that is publicly documented in analysis of weapons debris through open-source tracking of shipments and in cases of American sanctions against Chinese companies. But, importantly, these officials also point to small quantities of artillery ammunition and military UAVs, drones. The resources that had enabled the Russian economy to grow for 2 years under conditions of war and sanctions have been exhausted. Governor of the Bank of Russia, Elvira Nabiullina.
The model of economic growth changes periodically. This, it seems to me, is a natural process. Now, when Maxim Stanislavovich talked about the exhaustion of the previous model of economic growth, I agree with him here as well. He was saying that we grew at quite high rates for 2 years because free resources and labor force were utilized. Look at how our unemployment has fallen. We largely used up this reserve, and many companies just faced a labor shortage.
This is unused production capacity. I would add that niches have opened up. Western companies have left import substitution.
I will add to this the resources accumulated in the National Wealth Fund budget, which are spent on investments. There is also the capital reserve of the banking system, which was the basis for accelerated lending. But we need to understand that many of these resources are indeed depleted. We need to think about some new model of growth.
And for the end, little fun. President Trump. Well, they should give me the Nobel Prize for Rwanda and, if you look, the Congo, or you could say Serbia, Kosovo, you could say a lot of them.
Liam Cosgrove with Zero Hedge. Former Congressman Matt Gaetz threw out an interesting idea suggesting that if you were to broker a deal where nuclear inspectors go into both Israel and Iran, that you could win a Nobel Peace Prize, and they might even rename it the Trump Peace Prize. Did you hear those? What do you think of that?
Well, they should give me the Nobel Prize for Rwanda and if you look, the Congo, or you could say Serbia, Kosovo, you could say a lot of them. You could say, I mean, the big one is India and Pakistan. I should have gotten it 4 or 5 times. I should get it for the, I would think the Abraham Accords would be a good one, too.
Well,
they won't give me a Nobel Peace Prize because they only give it to liberals.
Would you support Iran?
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Rescues every day. We had a guy last week at 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.